Welcome back to the Game Changers podcast, everyone. My name is Coach Jay, and I am so excited for this episode. I have a good friend of mine on today, and when the Game Changers podcast was Us Girls Basketball, my friend Bri was on it, I believe, once or twice, and it's just been the coolest thing ever to see how she kind of talked about her company Shooters Shoot then in the launch of it at the start, and then fast forward like a year or so later just to see where it's at today. So I'm super pumped to have Bri on the podcast today. So Bri, how are you doing?
Yeah, so well. That's so crazy. I forgot that you changed from Us Girls to Game Changers basketball, which seems so astute for something we're gonna talk about later. That's wild. Yeah, proud of you too, man. We're out here
Thank
building
you.
what we do.
Yes, we are. And it's just cool to see where we started and we met being what we call them playmakers, customer service playmakers was thank you for calling for a basketball camp. So it was really cool like how we started and got to like just build like a friendship and community there, and then now we're both doing our own things and it's just really cool. So Bri, before we get started, could you give everyone a little bit of a background introduction to what you're doing right now?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. So Shooter Shoots is something I've built initially on shot development and thought development. It's yeah, expert shot analysis and training. I'm fascinated by the mechanics and the mindset and psychology of shooting and teaching shooting. And I'm also really passionate about it's tied to confidence and how we can shape that and shape people to be confident people and go through hard things through the medium of shooting and continue to shoot through slumps. That's it. Just translates to so much more than basketball. So that's where it all started. It shifted then into the foundation is always expert shot training. And so we've added layers to it. Now the next layer after that was a mentorship program, which we run every week. It's free for athletes. We That's something I was really conscientious about, is not ever charging athletes for the access to mentorship. So we run Sunday night meetings every night. Our director of mentorship, Cassie Breen, is just the perfect person for that job, and she does an excellent job there. There's that. We have some online products for coaches, resources, all of that. And so the second layer was building the online version of it to serve people. Any athlete that comes to a Shooter Shoots clinic, they're not actually just coming to a camp, they're actually joining the mentorship program. It's required to jump onto the back end in order to attend the camp. How active they are is up to them. But so Shooter Shoot then, yes, is expert shot training, but also a mentorship program. From there, it went to, my initial why, the game that I was playing, the result that I wanted was better shooters, right? And that's been working. And we've been having a lot of success there. And now I think the game that I'm playing has shifted into how can I impact as many humans, as many women as I can in growing the game. And still throwing noodles at the wall and seeing which ones stick. But ultimately, that's where we are now. Is there's different facets to the business. There's always going to be the teaching as the foundation. I love to teach. I love to teach players how to shoot, how to understand their shot. There's the mentorship piece, and then there's the conferences, clinics, 3-point shootouts. It's just finding ways to use basketball as the medium.
I love that so much because, again, those who know my mission and my kind of brand is using basketball as that tool, but to reach other different things, whether that, like you were saying, like your mindset or your confidence or just who you are as a woman too. So I believe that that is just so awesome that you have that same mission, because in the world of athletics, we can get just so caught up in like our performance, and then that leads into our value, and then we have that as our identity, and then we're never going to find true fulfillment in that, in our stats. So again, it inspires me so much more when I see other basketball trainers just have that same mindset. So I think that that's just so incredible and really cool. So just kind of leading into that, Bree, I know I ask this question all the time, but I want an updated version of what is the biggest piece of advice you would give your younger basketball self?
My younger basketball self, that it's not selfish to catch and shoot even when I've missed a couple. That's actually the opposite. It's actually, um, I realize that when I frame it that way, like if I missed a couple of shots, naturally, what every young player does is hesitate, right, on the next time they catch. And they think I'm being unselfish in that way. I'm trying to get somebody else the ball. I'm trying to, do this or that. But really, what I've realized in my, later years is that that moment of hesitation is actually the selfish decision. It's making that entire play about me and my fear and my not wanting to fail. And yeah, fear is just something that we have a conversation with. Fear is not something that we let dictate what we do. And that's what's a piece of advice is it's okay if you've missed a few. Inevitably, you're going to miss more. And that it was actually the selfish decision was to hesitate rather than to just let it fly. Because now my post players know that I'm going to shoot when I'm open. My crashers on the outside, they know what to expect from me, rather than letting fear dictate the choices that are made.
Absolutely. Yeah, like you said, it disrupts the flow of the game because a lot of times when you hesitate to shoot, a turnover follows. Whether that's you travel because your feet aren't set, you turn the ball over on a pass because now you're hesitating on where to go. Like you said, now the post players know where to go. So yeah, that's a really good piece of advice that I think a lot of players need to kind of soak in. And I just had that conversation with one of my athletes recently. She missed like, I think like 3 or 4 in a row, one game. And she's like, but I'm missing it. But I was like, but was it a good shot? She's like, yeah, okay, cool. It was in flow, it was in rhythm. She came from like the short corner out to like the 3 point line. And it was a great in rhythm shot. So keep shooting. Like it you will miss. That's the thing. Like I don't think one coach has ever been like, "I expect you to make 100% of your shots in a game." We know that that's literally impossible. I think what only like one person has ever been like 100% or whatever like for like when they shot like 15 plus shots or whatever. But yeah, so I love that piece of advice so much. So kind of actually leading into this is you're training a lot on shooting technique, shooting form, helping athletes really be a knockdown shooter. So what is a common mistake that you're seeing in athletes or in basketball players with needing to correct their shot? So what's a mistake that you're seeing a lot that you're like, okay, I got to correct this over and over and over again?
Yeah, there's two or three really common enhancements that I make to shooters every time I do a breakdown or every time I run a clinic. One is getting stacked in your body. And so by stacked, I mean making sure that your ankles, hips, and shoulders are stacked in a straight line when you are rising up into your shot. Most players at all levels tend to lean forward towards their target, which makes sense because we're shooting at an object that's, over there. But allowing our bodies to sit into our stack actually makes us more powerful. Even though it's counterintuitive, we think we're not leaning towards our target, and it also makes it easier for us to regulate our power. So that's number one, sitting into our stack, making sure ankles, hips, and shoulders are in alignment. And then another one is having our whole hand on the basketball. So many coaches, especially youth coaches, for whatever reason, tend to teach that there needs to be space in the palm whenever you shoot. And that's just bananas to me.
Thank
Like
you.
oh my
Thank you
God,
for
I can
saying
under,
that.
I can understand like where that would have come from. Like, oh, finesse, right? And all of that. But a basketball is actually a fairly, when we're speaking about shooting at a long distance, it's not a ping pong ball. Like it's a fairly heavy object. And so our relationship with the basketball depends on the surface area of our hand that was controlling the basketball. And so when we do that, when we teach players just to have space here and have it resting on their finger pads, what happens is what I call spaghetti fingers, and they're now trying to shoot with power through the basketball. And the ball is like stretching their fingers backwards rather it being something that just goes forwards towards the basket. And our strongest part of our hand is this little meaty part right here between our uh, forefinger and second finger. And being able to have that contact on the ball as long as comfortable, right? And go through the basketball when you shoot. Because inevitably that it has hindered so many shooters in the long run in their power, especially with a game that's moving further and further away from the basket. Um, I would say the other one or two is shooting smooth, right? Or allowing yourself to dip the basketball, allowing yourself to load the basketball low. A lot of you know older teaching methods say keep the ball above your chest. If you're in the paint and you're rebounding, absolutely keep the ball up high. But if we prevent ourselves from loading the basketball low, it's really hard to generate power. That's like saying, to punch somebody, but your elbows have to start by your sides rather than allowing yourself to have full extension. Your one's going to have more power than the other. Common response there is like, oh, well, coach says I'm going to get blocked if I bring the ball down low. And it's like, well, if somebody's that close to you anyway, the read is not shoot. And so, and then I did this study one time, a little over a year ago of all of the catch and shoots from the 2021-2022 NBA season. It was 33,000 data points. I just went back to the hotel every day and watched 3 or 4 hours of film of catch and shoots specifically. And of those 33,000 data points, only 12 had no dip whatsoever.
Wow.
So that's one. And then dipping the basketball allows us to shoot smooth, shoot with like keeping consistent speed on the ball from start to finish with no pauses, no slowdowns, no nothing is a super slept on teaching point. I think like if any athlete is listening to this, like after this podcast, go to the gym and just focus on keeping the same speed through the ball the entire time, lifting the ball and then extending the ball at the same speed. Not only is that going to be easier for your body to repeat over and over again and find rhythm through, it's also going to contribute to more power. Power comes from consistent force applied to an object for as long as possible. So starting low and applying consistent speed through the ball is going to be advantageous to power and to being able to repeat that motion. Last one I'll give is the release point. Tends to be a problem, especially in our younger players, which when you're young, I think the focus should not be technique as much as it should be how to move power through your body and how to find rhythm through your body. Because inevitably, little people are going to grow up and develop musculature in their shoulders and their chest. They're going to, so you're going to have to change the upstairs part of it anyway. Like you're going to have to adjust it. And so focusing instead on how do I get used to shooting smooth? How do I get stacked? How do I get a good rhythm going through? Is important. And then once you get to a level of control in your upper body, then making sure our release point, it's super simple. Um, if you want to find your release point, you just film yourself from the side. And then when you just catch and shoot a couple of shots, when you look at your video, where the ball starts at its lowest points in your shot, like right around your stomach area, if you drew a straight line through that ball from floor to ceiling, that is also where you should start releasing the basketball. So the basketball should come off of your fingertips on that same line that goes through the basketball straight up from the floor to ceiling. Not necessarily that's where your wrist should be. Your wrist is usually still going to follow through a little bit in front of it, but where the ball starts to come off your fingertips, we've seen this in all of the greatest shooters that we've studied, from Caitlin Clark to Steph Curry to James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, all of these, Diana Taurasi, all of these shooters. We can turn the video to the side, or we could get their S curve that the ball makes, and we find that where the ball starts is where the release is happening within inches every single time. So those are, I would say, the major corrections that I give. Okay. Can I give one more?
Absolutely, please.
Last one, and this was the one that this teaching point is what made my social media go bananas. It was just one video where I corrected a young man named Joseph. in Sweden whenever I was doing some work there. He was coming up for 50 minutes. Joseph had not yet made two in a row. And at this point, and I've been giving him these different teaching points, giving him different things to focus on. And at 15 minutes in, I'm like, man, maybe I'm not, maybe I'm not supposed to be doing this right now. I can't help this. Maybe I'm, maybe I'm not very good at this. But he was coming up, and what he was doing is he was lifting the ball up, and he was like crunching his forearm into on his shooting hand into his bicep.
Mm,
Um, like that's called what's what I call collapsing the angle. So if you imagine yourself shooting and your wrist gets close as it can to your shoulder, that would be like collapsing that angle. So what I told him was to pretend that there was an egg, right, like in that crevice, the elbow crease there. I said, pretend there's an egg right here, and don't break the egg. And that just clicked for him. And he went and he hit like six out of the next seven shots. And it's crazy how we tend to complicate shooting, and it could be something that's so simple. So not
hmm
crushing the egg, not necessarily meaning we need to be at a 90. A lot of people, I think I've heard a 90-degree angle that you're making with your bicep and your elbow. Most great shooters don't shoot at a 90-degree angle because it would be very difficult to get leverage under the ball from distance. But what we just don't want to do is we don't want to close that angle. We don't want to crush the egg because then we're removing power from the basketball that we're already generating from when we're starting up. That's our stability and our leverage in our shot. So we don't want to crush the egg.
Yeah. So good. I remember that video because obviously we already been like, friends on social media and stuff, but I was going through like TikTok and I was watching this video and I think it was like one of those like Overtime or Balls Life or something that reposted. Yeah, yeah, yes, ESPNW. And I'm looking and I'm like, is that Brie?
Brett, we out here. We out here. ESPNW took it up. I was like, what are you doing right now? Why did you post that?
I was looking at it and I was like, oh my gosh, that's Brie. I know her. What the heck?
A week before that, I was still in Sweden. So when I posted that video, I had just gotten home from Sweden. I almost got left in Sweden. My parents thought that I
Oh
got kidnapped in Sweden.
no.
Like,
No.
I'll share some of that story in a minute if you want. But
Yes.
a week before that, um, I had posted what just was seemed like normal content for me. Like I was doing a shooting drill where um, you have to make five threes from five spots, but if you miss two in a row, it knocks you back a spot. And
hmm
that was it. Like it was just, me catching and shooting in this cool gym in Sweden. And that next morning, I woke up, and this was after like a year and a half of building this business and like the hardships that come along with it. This was in February or early March, and just that December before, I was scraping quarters off of my floorboards, like trying to finish a load of laundry. I was living in this shitty apartment in Dallas with my roommate and his dog, who is so stinking cute and an absolute menace. And like all of my bank account bouncing from $200 to negative $34 to just barely making rent to like cycling through, and just you start to question like, God, like, is all of this really worth it? And so fast forward, now it's first week of March. I'm in Sweden. I just make this very casual um, content that, I'd been pumping out for the last year and a half anyway. And I woke up the next morning and Steph Curry followed me.
What? I didn't know that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's so sick.
And he commented on that, what I thought was just some basic piece of content, and was like, love your work, love the content, keep it going. And I remember so I was in Sweden dog sitting a French bulldog named Yoda. And I ninja out of bed, and Yoda was like, "Ah," like a French bulldog. And we went outside, and it was like one of the two sunny days in Sweden that I experienced there in the 3 weeks that I was there. And I took him on a little walk, and I came back upstairs, and I set my keys down on the island. And I just remember like just sobbing, like just letting out this huge, like cathartic, just all of this work. Like something like the best shooter of all time, lending his support, like, bro, why are you following me? Was just one of those validating things that, yeah, it pushes you forward, chipping away at the rock, at the boulder, right, over and over and over again. And it's not the last hit that splits the boulder, it's all the ones you did before. And so it felt like a boulder splitting moment for me. And yeah, then that very next week, that video with Joseph went bananas. And since then, the social media has grown exponentially, and I'm like still not sure like what to do with my hands, when it comes to like people recognize, like a couple people have recognized me in airports and like obviously at shooting camps. They're, like, hey, I've been following you on social media for so long. It's so cool. I can't believe you're here. And
Wow.
it's like, I'm just a regular ass shooting coach, out here. Not really yeah. So it's been cool. I've been to use the platform for I've always been very conscious about using the platform and giving away my best information. That's when I started to grow, is when I stopped gatekeeping. So I
Yep.
thought I was going
Yeah.
to keep all my teaching and stuff behind a paywall, and it's like, man, information should be free. And so I just started putting out my best stuff, and then, feedback and stuff. Like if people submit videos, I mean, feedback's not free, but the
Yeah.
information itself, I think should
Yeah.
be. So I made a really conscious decision to be about people over profits from a very early part of this business.
Yeah. I love that. Well, there's two things here that I just want to touch on. First of all, I know why people follow you, and that's because you're there to serve. You know what I mean? You're serving these kids, you're serving these athletes. Because I know you just don't work with like middle school, high school athletes. You work with higher elite athletes as well. But that's why people follow you. So I just want to like give you some life-giving words here. You know what I mean? And there's a reason why. You know what I mean? So just keep leaning into that, and it's super easy. It happens to me more times than I would like, where that imposter syndrome comes into play. And it's tough and it sucks and it's not the like most fun thing, but I just want to encourage you with that like you have knowledge and people see that. Like to be honest with you, people would not follow you if you didn't have knowledge. You know what I'm saying? Because how many times you see people having like a viral video, but then you go to their page afterwards and like there's not much traction afterwards. It's because they don't have the information. That viral video was a tool for people to get to your platform because you already had, like, what'd you say, a year and a half worth of content and information and knowledge already there. So people are like, nope, I'm going to grab onto this because there's something there. So I just want to leave you with that and encourage you. But then the second thing, something sparked in my brain when you were talking about like chipping away, chipping away, chipping away. And you were talking about obviously your business and like the knowledge, but that is such a two-sided thing when it comes to your athletic career. Because one of the things I talk about with athletes all the time is it's the long game. You can't, especially because I work with a lot of middle school athletes right now, and they are just like, I need to be there now. You know what I mean? I need to be varsity level or like senior varsity level tomorrow. And I'm like, well, that's not going to happen. You know what I mean? So, but I want to kind of talk about that conversation a little bit is having that long game and chipping away and chipping away and chipping away. That means sometimes I got to go through the messy of my shot sucks right now. Like point blank period, it is a mess. It sucks. How would you encourage athletes to take a step back and embrace the like what I call embrace the messy? So like embrace that time of like I'm not really having the best time right now with whether that's me working on my shot, the flow of my shot sucks, the form of my shot's not there, my mindset's not there. How would you encourage athletes to chip away and to embrace the long game? All those kinds of things.
Yeah, I think two pieces to that. I think the greatest like experts in anything in the world, whether it be basketball or music or acting or science or math or whatever it is, um, they were they had to be okay with looking foolish at first, like with understanding they're not going to be great at something on their way to being great at something. I think that's the hardest part is like
That
those
was so
first,
good.
yeah, those first, 3 or 4 months. Like, can you just be okay with looking silly and staring that fear of failure in the face and just having a conversation with it instead of letting it dictate what you do? And if you can get there, like the masters of their crafts, Steph Curry airballs sometimes, and he doesn't do it in front of just a few friends or his teachers. He does it in front of millions of people. And so you have to be okay with looking foolish when you're trying to start being great at something like that and not being great at something on the way to becoming great at something. That's one piece. And the other piece is, I think in athletics, and I've said this a couple of times before on other podcasts, but I think in athletics, and we really just tend to put a huge emphasis on goals. And don't get me wrong, I think goals are important and they're factors in driving you forward. But I think a better question is, does this thing bring you enthusiasm even on bad days? And if it doesn't, then you haven't quite found your personal legend yet. It doesn't mean you quit necessarily, but can you find a way to be enthusiastic about this thing, understanding that you're chipping away at it and that you are getting better, and measuring yourself, right? How long does it take me to make 50 shots today versus 50 shots yesterday? That's a tangible tool. But really, I think a lot of people, I've gotten this question a lot, like, what's your goal with shoot or shoot? What is it? And I don't know. I don't really have one. Like, I don't have a goal for it. I have little, I have projects and goals and stuff that I stumble upon and I'm like, yeah, I believe in this thing. This thing would give me enthusiasm even on bad days. So yeah, this is my goal right now. But long term, I have no idea. I have some direction. I do, but I think that's where we then become just really purpose driven in that when you go at something like this is my purpose right now. And our purpose can shift. It doesn't mean this has to be the for everything. But where I find purpose and enthusiasm right now is in building myself up in this thing. The 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 goals and the milestones that we hit along the way are just a byproduct of letting our purpose drive us. And so it's so easy to get caught up in, the judgment, both from others and from ourselves, the teammates, the not being at the place that you want to be yet. And I think that's good, right? It's okay to feel that way. But what we don't do is we don't let frustration dictate what we do next. And so be frustrated, punt basketballs. I've done it, plenty of times. And then you chase that thing down and you keep shooting. I think that's two pieces I would give to players who are struggling and they're not there yet. It's like at some point you have to have the audacity of self-belief. You have to
Mhm.
believe that you're going to get to this place despite not having evidence in front of you yet. And if you can get there, and that's a little bit crazy, if you can let yourself be a little bit crazy in that way. I watched this clip just yesterday from Jim Carrey actually, and he said I think what's crazy about me, I have this insane belief in manifesting the things that I want. And I just believe it. Like, I just decide that it's going to be hard and I'm going to believe it anyway. He said, I actually think that's not insanity. I think that's actually true sanity. Like, that is truth there is if you, we're so lucky to live in a place and space where we are constantly there's proof right in front of us that the harder you work at something, the better you're going to get at it. Like we
Mhm.
have that displayed. What are a couple of things you've done already where you've just worked really hard on it and you are better at it? Basketball can absolutely be one of those. If you're already listening to this, you were a terrible basketball player at some point in your life. Like when you
Yeah,
were tiny,
absolutely.
you couldn't dribble, right? You couldn't shoot, you couldn't reach. And as you grew and as you kept practicing, what do you know? Now you can do layups. Now you can do it between the legs. Now you're building, right? So use that as evidence that it works. And yeah, basketball's hard. If it wasn't hard, everybody would do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, I want everybody to just rewind about like 7 minutes or 5 minutes, however long that was, and just listen to that again. Just go listen to that again because you just dropped some nuggets, and I just kind of want to rephrase, not rephrase, but go back to those. Is one thing, two things I love you said. You said be okay with looking foolish, and then I believe again that goes hand in hand with it's okay to be frustrated and like you said, punt the ball or just slam the ball. But then what'd you say right after that? Go chase it down. So we have to embrace again, like what I keep saying is I always call it like embrace the messy, or I tell my athletes it is going to be awkward. Welcome that awkwardness. Welcome it because it will happen. I'm not going to sit here and promise you that you're going to feel great every time you do a drill or learning a new skill. You can be frustrated, but what's your response after that frustration? That is what makes or breaks you reaching this level to this level and being okay with that awkward, disgusting, messy in between that no one likes to go through, but that is that threshold. That is that breaking point. I think about all those like Marvel movies or whatever when there's like this force field and you see them, they're like pressing through it and they're pressing through it and they're just not quite yet through it, but they keep going and they're frustrated and they're grunting and they're like, but they finally get through it and then triumph happens, right? They win the war or the battle or whatever. That was kind of
Oh, that was
the
super nerdy, Jay.
I know that was very nerdy. That there was there my nerdy side just really came out right there. So I'm sorry to everyone.
That was a great
But
image.
that's like the image that I was thinking about when you were kind of saying those things. And I know some people are super visual learners. So yeah, I absolutely loved what you had to say there. And I am going to be sharing that with all of my athletes so they hear another voice. Because I said everything that you just said, I've been saying it. I've been saying it. But now look, there's someone else. Imagine that. Now there's someone else who's saying the same thing. It's like coach knows at least one thing.
Yeah, the reason I still have a job is because uh, for some reason athletes, children, kids, and us too, right? We when we're young, we have this natural resistance to our parents or to our common voices. And so if I had a nickel for every time a parent told me they just need another voice, yeah, that's why I
Oh,
still have a job.
same.
Um,
Literally.
is yeah. And I think I wanted to touch on something you said. You mentioned like the emotions of like slamming the ball on the ground, punching the basketball or whatever. I think we, especially in sports, especially in girls, we tend to teach them to like hinder and keep emotions in whenever things are frustrating because then you're mentally tough or whatever. In games, absolutely. Like, don't be going bananas, right? There's a time and a place.
Yeah.
But with my athletes, especially my mentees, the top tier of my roster that I travel to athletes and we'll do 4-day intensives that are just one-on-one. We'll spend the whole day together. We'll mentor the family. I'll cook for them. Like it's a really cool, intimate like mentorship experience. And with those athletes, it's like they have this idea that they can't show frustration in workouts.
Hmm.
And it's like, bro, be frustrated. Like, if you do you want to punt this basketball right now? Like, there's nobody around. Do that. Slam the ball on the floor, right? You're just trying to be great. That's why you feel that. And in practice, you're safe here to let that shit out. Because if you keep it in, then it's gonna come out in games where, you know, your emotions are even higher, right? And your capacity for your emotional load is not going to be the same because there's all this other emotional load that's coming in from your adrenaline, from the people in the stands, from whatever. And so I want to encourage our athletes listening to this, both male and female, that in practice, especially when you're alone or when you're one-on-one with the trainer, like allow yourself to freak out if you need to go a little bananas. Right. We don't want that to be the norm as far as, you're freaking out every single time. But if there's this thing you're really frustrated with, it is okay to let yourself feel those emotions and those frustrations. And again, we just don't let it dictate what we do.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I think we tend to take away some of our power for potential when we say you can't put your emotions into this. When I feel if we put our emotions into reps, then we're doing all of the work and not just some of it. So just
Hmm.
that brought that up for me. That's been really helpful for the athletes that I've
Yeah.
used that with is like, bro, get mad. Fine. Like, I'm not
Hmm.
mad. You get mad. Go ahead. I'm not going to
Yeah.
get mad for you
Yeah.
because I'm your teacher. I'm your coach. Like I'm always going to stay even for you. If you
Hmm.
need to get mad, I'm not going to get mad at you for getting mad. Like do you, but we
Hmm.
are going to finish this workout.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, punt the ball, go chase it. Not punt the ball, go wallow in self pity and just give up on yourself and those kinds of things. You know what I'm saying? And I do love that point where, like you said, don't make it the norm. We want you to have a great mistake response, but we're also human. We're not just athletes. We are humans. And what is like, I feel like this is like therapy 101 is don't hold it in. Like so it's like why would you change that any different? But again, mistake response, we're not saying explode on everybody and go nuts and crazy or go ballistic on your teammates, but again, we are in practice. You are frustrated because what if like how many times are there, I'm sure you this happens to you all the time, how many times have an athlete or you've worked with an athlete in the past like maybe 2 or 3 sessions their shot was really good, you felt like you were getting somewhere, and then maybe that fourth session it's just an off day, right? And you're frustrated because you're like, what, those 2, 3, 4 sessions were just so good and my shot feels so good on game 1, 2, and 3, but I came back to game 4 and it just sucked. I didn't feel in rhythm. I didn't feel that. That's okay. It's gonna happen, but it's your mistake response to that game. You keep shooting. Shoot or shoot. Wow. It's like it all comes full circle. Who would have thought, you know?
Yeah. It's and that's bad shooting days um are still good as long as you're understanding why you're missing.
Say that again.
Yeah, bad shooting days are still good days as long as you understand the whys behind why you're missing. So if you have bad shooting days and then you stop
Hmm.
studying yourself, and you just get frustrated and then like go to a different place mentally, then yeah, that's probably not going to serve you. But I've had some of my best shooting performances on days after I like couldn't hit a brick wall in practice because I was studying myself during those reps and understanding, oh, I missed because that was a rhythm thing, or I missed because my left hand got involved too much, or I missed because I was off balance. Right, as long as I'm understanding my whys and still studying um, myself, like that's a cheat code in shooting. I
Hmm.
think is seeing misses as data is one, but actually reframing your mind as you're observing yourself
Hmm.
rather than experiencing um, the miss itself, which is kind of an
Yeah.
abstract thought. But if we observe the
Hmm.
thinker, right, is what it's called. Watching the thinker is in this book I'm reading. But it helps you get past those emotions a little quicker. And now when you're missing, it's more like, how about that? And then you can just
Yeah.
study and keep it
Yeah.
moving. That was a really helpful, like mindset shift that I made between my junior and senior year of college.
Yeah.
And that completely changed the nature of the way that I trained, and the way that I responded to misses, even in games.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's one thing that I'll cue my athletes with a lot is especially if we're working on our shot or even like a move or attack move and it's like I put the question back on them of like why'd you miss that? And it's so that they can understand they have a feel of the game. They have a feel of their shot. It's like all the best shooters, all the best athletes have a feel for the game and how they move. So they know immediately by the time they release that ball, they know what they did wrong or right. So it's not about, I think athletes now are relying too much on their trainer or their coach to tell them what they did wrong and right versus them having that natural feel. So it's like we're having a shooting day and it's like I'm giving them the tools and the equipping them with like the cues or like hey you shot too hard, it came off your hand this way, look where your fingertips were pointing, you didn't jump, all those things they know. So now it's like you missed why. How can we correct that? And then they pretty much 9 times out of 10 go back and they at least focus on that one thing. We might have another mistake on the other end, but yeah.
I think that's something that's on coaches and trainers too. So there's this concept in sport, in skill acquisition and skill adaptation called faded feedback. And it's the way we give feedback to players. Um, at the very beginning of learning a new skill, then we give them a ton of feedback right at first. And then as they understand the intended outcome and they understand their movements more, then we need to fade our feedback out to where it's nearly completely. And so faded feedback is like how I teach my shooters is at the very beginning. Yeah, okay, I'm going to give you a ton. And then once I understand you feel the thing we're looking for, then I back off and I don't hardly give you any feedback at all unless I see you make that same mistake 7 or 8 times in a row. And then I'm going to step in and be like, okay, like, so we've lost the feeling a little bit. But golf pros use that. Um, Expert skill acquisition specialists use that. And so I think, especially in shooting, we do tend to overcoach shooters. We do tend to give too much feedback all of the time, and parents too, right? Because we're just trying to help, right? But if we give too much feedback, then if they're getting external feedback every single time, then they never get to make the brain body connection and correct their own mistakes.
Yeah.
So yeah, that faded feedback thing has exponentially increased the time, or I should say, decreased the time it takes to acquire a new skill.
That's awesome. Well, good. Well, all that is just amazing. Everything you said. I just want, honestly, I would encourage you athletes to watch back this podcast over because you're going to find different bits of information that you can apply to different parts of your game, which is amazing. But Bri, before we head off, you have an exciting project coming up that I just want you to talk about. I'm going to let you just chat about it.
Yeah, it's called Changing the Game. Oddly enough, is the name, and it's the first ever completely women led coaching conference. We're holding it at the 2024 Women's Final Four in Cleveland, Ohio, and the idea struck me um, after I gave one of my first keynote appearances at a player development conference. And it's funny, when they asked me to speak, I made the mistake of thinking that they wanted me to talk about shooting when really what they wanted me to talk about was what it's like to be a woman in this space. And it was well meaning, right? These weren't bad men or bad people or anything. And so that's what I did. I spoke on what it's like to be a woman in this space. And my message was like, y'all want to know what it's like to be a woman in this space? It's being asked to speak at a player development conference about what it's like to be a woman instead of this craft that I'm so committed to. It's yeah, the burden of needing to educate on things that seem obvious to us, but might not seem so obvious to you. And here's the truth. If you want to empower women's voices, if you want to empower my voice, ask me about basketball. That's how we go about changing the game. Uh, that is what inspired the name of the conference. And here's how it's going to be different than most coaching conferences. One, Nancy Lieberman is our headliner, who is just an absolute legend. I can't believe she said yes. We also have three keynotes, myself, Marky Freeman, and VJ, or Virjo Bustos. All three of us, well, not me so much, but Marky and Virjo are world-renowned keynote speakers. And we have women in the basketball field that aren't just coaches, but they are all there serving basketball in ways that I think a lot of coaches don't understand basketball is being served. So you think of a coaching conference, it's all coaches talking systems and strategies, this, that, and the other. Or we've got a sports psychologist that worked with the San Antonio Spurs. We've got an applied movement specialist that's worked with many NBA, WNBA players. We've got we've got ESPN analysts, we've got mental performance coaches, we've got biomechanics experts who have worked with G League, NBA, PGA golfers. We've got camp directors who have led camps for Steph Curry, for Nike, for Dick's Sporting Goods, who we've got trainers who were handpicked by Kobe to be part of the WNBA preseason program that he was building in about 6 to 8 weeks before he passed. And these are all different parts of basketball that I think coaches all need, right? We need the applied movement stuff. We need the sports psychology stuff. We need the mental performance stuff. We need the culture pieces. We need the biomechanics. And so we are curating the experience really carefully, not just to serve coaches in a way that they haven't been served yet, but also the whole day is completely meant to encourage connection. That's 2 days. So Nancy Lieberman kicks it off. We go through our speakers, and then we have our mixer at a place called Shooters on the Water. Naturally, that's what it's called. And then yeah, after that, we have day two. We're looking for Machine Gun Kelly to sponsor the coffee and donut mixer because he's got a coffee shop in Cleveland. And yeah, it's just like-minded people coming together. We've also got a surprise guest that will be at the mixer who nobody's going to know until they show up. But we're working on confirming her now. But it's the first ever, it's the first time something like this that's meant to serve coaches is completely led by women.
I love that so much. Bri, you're doing amazing things, and that as a woman is so encouraging and amazing. And I mean, I just had this conversation yesterday with another, she's a sports psychologist actually for an MLB team. And we were just chatting about how like just in this sports athletic space, it's just naturally more male dominated. You know what I mean? And I talk to my athletes all the time about how my first ever woman head coach was my freshman year of college. Like I went my whole career without having that. And I just think that it is so powerful, but also on top of that, it's powerful when it is women who care. I think there's a lot of times where, there's a lot of women coaches at the younger level that just they're not as passionate about it, and that's not a knock on them or anything because we get men that are like that too. But I just think it's awesome that you're holding a space for women who truly have a passion for what they're doing, and it's not just men versus women or whatever, but it's like they are passionate about teaching the game of basketball or teaching athletics, and you're holding a space for them. And I think that's just incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and it's really not even about us. It's about the little girl who's in the gym building right now who
I
doesn't
agree.
understand that this platform is for them, right? The little girl
Hmm.
who is not going to be, you know, maybe not going to fulfill her dream of going pro, or maybe she is dreaming of being a WNBA coach, and
Hmm.
now it's it's showing her that like there are spaces that want her there.
I agree.
We
Yeah.
already have several coaches lined up for the 2025 Final
Hmm.
Four. This is something we're going to build year over year to highlight the women who are doing the work in
Yeah.
this
Yeah,
space. So it's going
I
to
agree.
be thick.
It's going to be awesome. Again, going back to that point is coaching is about serving. You know what I mean? If you're a coach that only cares about wins and how I can look good and how I can be the best, that you're not going to do that. Because if I don't have players, I can't win. I can't do anything. And like you said, I love exactly your mission behind it. It's about the little girl that can be impacted. It's not about us. You know what I mean? We're just trying to find the resources to equip us to be able to equip them. It's like this flow thing. It flows to me, it flows through me type of thing. And that's incredible. And yeah, I think that's all of our motivations with coaching is like, what would I have done to my younger little self, or what would I have if I could redo it again? You know what I mean? What would I have wanted? And that's what I think is so beautiful about the nature of coaching is it is a complete impact and give back profession. And it's even on the hard days, right? Even on the mentally tough, physically tough, why am I doing this type of day? The coolest thing ever is being able to be in a session with an athlete and that skill clicked and you just see their smile. It makes me just want to continue to do it over and over and over again. It's for those little moments. And I just think what you're doing embodies that. And I'm just so blessed to have you as a friend and be in your corner. So you're amazing, Bri. Thanks, girl. We're amazing. It's like high five through the screen. Self celebration. Amazing. Well, Bri, I've had just the best time being able to catch up with you and also have this conversation. Before we head off, where can people find you?
Yeah, Instagram is where I'm most active. Shooters X Shoot 70 is my tag. The conference, the website is changingthegamefinal4.com. And the yeah, been working on the YouTube channel. I'm building that as well. So all of that information can come from the link tree that's in my Instagram bio. But that's where I'm at. Shooters X Shoot 70.training is my website where information on that and the 3-point shootout we're also running at the Final Four. The information on that is there too. So yeah, that's where you can find me. Thanks for having me on.
Amazing. Yeah, of course. So, again, everybody, the links will be in the bio if you're watching the YouTube channel. Please make sure to subscribe, rate this podcast, all that good stuff. Go follow Bri, go check out everything she's doing. Just super honored to have her as a guest, and we will see you guys next week. Peace.